Well, happy Friday to you. You are watching the Sean Spicer Show. Welcome. We've had quite the week, haven't we? It's historic, and you got to be part of this show with us. We've had a great group of guests all week long breaking down everything that's going on in Washington. I mean, between Trump's trial, this gag order that the Trump judge put on him up there, him kind of going out there and sitting through a couple days of testimony, and then doing these little pressers at the end, reading out what's happening, the judge trying to decide his fate, him calling for the debates. I mean, that would have been enough. But no, no. We saw history. For the first time ever, a Speaker of the House was ousted after a motion to vacate. And as I said earlier on the week, I mean, I don't know what I thought would happen, to be blunt. I kind of somehow thought McCarthy would scrape by. That's what Gaetz thought, too, that he would have this team up of Democrats, they'd sell out. And now we know that's not the case. The race to succeed him is well underway. But when that vote occurred, there were 8 Republicans who voted no. And there was one name that stood out to me. And I bet you it stood out to many of you. I mean, Gaetz and Rosendale from Montana, Bob Good of Virginia, those folks hadn't supported McCarthy. They were the holdouts. They voted present. They never really were with him. So there's no huge surprise. But the name that I thought jumped out at me, and I literally was like, there's no way that's right, that's got to have been a misvote, was Nancy Mace of South Carolina. Nancy Mace prides herself on not being a firebrand conservative on guns and abortion. She's looked for some pragmatic solution. She is by no means, I think she likes the term moderate. But that name stood out. Why did she join with that other group of 7 to oust Kevin McCarthy? Well, guess what? We're going to ask her. She is here with us today. She was actually on The View earlier this week. She goes everywhere. Give her a lot of credit for that. I mean, she's an articulate spokesperson. But what is her agenda? What does she want to see going forward? And why did she do what she did? Well, we're going to ask her. We've got a great conversation. There's clearly a lot to cover because it has been an historic and a wild week. So let's get into it. All right, I want to jump in and talk to you a little bit about your health. I know a lot of you have been taking care of yourself, watching what you eat, maybe doing a little more exercise. But the latest data from the American Heart Association indicates that adults with a fatty liver, and I know that sounds gross, but it's true, were 3.5 times more likely to have heart failure than those without. And the American Liver Foundation says that 100 million Americans, right, have a fatty liver. So do the math on that one. It means many people are at risk. And you think about all the things that we throw at our livers: cholesterol, alcohol, toxins, statins, smoke, stuff in the air. And the liver does a ton for us. 500 key functions every day. It's helping you. So let's do something for your liver. Liver Health Formula is an all-natural supplement that contains 12 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. And it's manufactured here in the United States, approved by U.S. doctors, and over 2 million people are already doing it. So you can try Liver Health Formula and get a free bottle of omega-3s, which helps your heart. So you're helping your liver and your heart if you use this special offer. GetLiverHelp.com/Spicer. GetLiverHelp.com/Spicer, and you get that free bonus gift of omega-3s that'll help your heart. So do something for your liver and help your heart. GetLiverHelp.com/Spicer. All right, as I said, we're going to have a nice conversation here with Congresswoman Nancy Mace. She represents South Carolina's 1st District. She was in the South Carolina legislature before that. She actually primaried Lindsey Graham before that. She has graduated magna cum laude from the Citadel. She was the first woman to ever graduate. That takes a lot. And she's all over the airwaves. As I mentioned, she was on The View earlier this week. You see her on CNN, on Fox. She is afraid to go nowhere. But that vote that she took to oust Kevin McCarthy made me do a double take. And so let's have a conversation with Nancy Mace to find out why she voted the way she is, what she sees as the way forward, what concerns she had about where things were going, what she wants to see accomplished. So without further ado, Nancy Mace. All right, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, you are the woman of the hour. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, as always, Sean.
You know, when we set this up,
it's interesting time.
It is an interesting time. You know, we had talked about, I really wanted to get you on the show because you've got such a great story. And I want people I want to talk about who you are as a person and what motivates you and all that kind of stuff. But obviously the moment requires we start with some things. So it was funny. I was sitting, we were doing the show when the vote for speaker goes off and they start reading the names. And there were obvious ones, Tim Burchett, Bob Good. And then someone says to me, Nancy Mace voted no. And I was like, no, you've got that wrong. Like, there's no way. That's not. And they literally were like, I'll show you the vote. And I was like, okay, you're reading the vote wrong. But I was like, there's no way. So walk us through, like, what was the reason that that you jumped into that group?
Yeah, no, we were the wild card. And when I made that vote, you could hear a very loud, audible gasp in the chamber. Somebody dropped an F-bomb on me. And that was the point where I said, you know what, I'm going to walk out of this room right now. For me, this wasn't about right versus left or ideology. This is about telling the truth and keeping your promises and keeping your word. And one of the things that we promised to do, former speaker promised, was that we would have a budget. We would have 12 separate appropriations and spending bills. We put the power of spending back into the people's hands rather than a very small select few most powerful people in both chambers, the foremost powerful people. And when that didn't happen, and you couple that with other promises that were made, I work on a lot of different legislation and policies. Like, don't make promises you can't keep, because consensus building isn't telling one thing to conservatives, another to moderates, and then Democrats something else. Consensus is not promising everything to everyone all the time, because that's just a lie. And we've been put ourselves in this situation. We're at $33 trillion in debt. We have a $2 trillion deficit every year. And that horrible debt ceiling plan is going to get us to $50 trillion over the next 10 years or more if we keep doing what we're doing. And we just can't do that anymore. And I remember 2008, the market was crashing, the real estate market was crashing, and I was starting my own company, and I was a young mom, and I could not afford health insurance. And COBRA at the time was $1,500 a month for a family of four. And I had no idea about politics or that I would ever be in office one day. And I remember watching all the speaker fights all the time, all of the spending, all of the lies to the American people, doing the continuing resolutions, doing the backroom deals, not keeping promises. And it would just make me so angry and so pissed off. And I didn't like it. And, Congress just thinks that because they have checks, that they have money, and they're writing checks they cannot keep. It has to stop. And we have to have people who are willing to say no more. And that's what this was about at the end of the day. It was doing right by the people and not by the establishment in DC. Like, I'm done with that.
Okay. And I think most of what you said, actually almost everything that you said, most people would agree with. But what I want to get to is let me back it up for a second. When you cast that vote, had you made up your mind, or was this something that you in the days before, kind of like what led up to it? Because I think that's what was fascinating about it, is that, like I said, everybody, the 5 or 6, 7 people, everybody knew. Was this something that you woke up that day and said, I'm just sick of it? Or was it something that evolved over those, maybe the 48 or something?
It evolved over time. And I was I voted for Kevin every single time in January. I said only Kevin in the speaker's vote originally. And I trusted his word. Right. I trusted that the plan that he had. And of course, none of that plan came to fruition. 0 of it came to fruition because he promised too many people too many things and then lied about it. He didn't keep his word. And all we have is our vote, our voice, and our word. And it didn't help that I was getting threatened by other members that they were going to withhold fundraising for me, including the former speaker. There were threats left and right being thrown around. I didn't like that. I don't feel like that is the ethical way to operate. All I have is my voice.
So I get that, but that's
all I have is my word.
And I get that. That's what I want to get to, though, is that did these people know? Had you been saying, gosh, I'm not sure anymore about Kevin? Like, what leading up to that, and that's what I'm just trying to get to, is your state of mind. Was this something that you were asking people and saying, guys, I'm having reservations? Or was it something that you had kind of made at the last moment? But how did I'm really just trying to get into your decision-making process.
Yeah, things went downhill about 3 weeks ago when I went to a member of staff at the speaker's office and I said, hey, we're facing a shutdown, facing the end of the year. None of the things that I had worked on had been moving at the time. And because I had the nerve to ask about those things, that staffer put their hands on me on the chamber, got very combative, and threatened me over defense appropriations because I had some things in the appropriations bill for defense and military. I sit on the House Armed Services. And from that moment on, things just went downhill from there. And I just said, you know what? I'm sick of this shit. Threatening people, being combative just because I'm trying to do my job, to me is ridiculous and is not the way that we should operate. There are not a lot of women in our conference. I happen to be a very strong woman and vocal. I don't toe the party line. I do not fall in line. I want to do what's right for America. And sometimes that means going against the party. When Republicans do something I agree with, I'll support them. And when they don't, I call them out. And that comes with consequences, Sean.
And so I listened to that press conference that McCarthy had afterwards. He was asked specifically about you. He said that you were on The View when he heard some of the comments that you were making about him. He called your office and talked to your chief of staff, and your chief of staff told him, hey, I've told Congresswoman Mace that you've upheld everything. Is that true? Is that not true?
I didn't hear the conversation. I don't know what words were exchanged on the phone call. My chief, of course, told me that he had called. But my first question was, why is the former speaker calling my staff and not me directly? I mean, I was very public about my frustration and why. And of course, everything that that the former speaker and I talked about, negotiated, I was very public about. And, we're 10 months into the year and zero had happened. So I'm not the one that got kicked out of my position for not telling the truth and for not keeping my word. And I was very public. I wanted people to know when I made those deals, what the deals were, what the timelines were, what that looked like, because again, I trust very few people in politics. It's
Smart.
It's a very low experience. It's hard, as you know, Sean. You can't trust anybody, and you certainly can't trust the establishment in D.C. And so now people are trying to kick me off my committees, take away my gavel on oversight. Meanwhile, I've done an excellent job on the impeachment inquiry. I do an excellent job in the investigations. All those things. I'm a strong voice for women and for that movement. And you want to take all that away because you're pissed about one vote that I voted over principle and over conscience. And I'm asking people to help me at nancymace.org and tell Washington how you really feel. We're done with this.
It's funny. You talk about the establishment in D.C. How's it going over in South Carolina?
Well, I got home late last night, and everyone that I've seen so far today, and I've been out and taking meetings, have been saying thank you.
Okay.
And they recognize that the job is not easy. And I'm from a purple district. We march to the beat of our own drum. I have more independent voters than I have Republicans, and barely have more Republicans than I have Democrats. Last year, I was a D+10 last summer after Roe v. Wade was overturned. And I gotten a lot of high fives, a lot of handshakes, a lot of thank yous from independent minded people that don't want me to go along just because I'm getting threatened. They want to know that I'm going to be there for the people and not for Washington.
All right, guys, you've heard me talk about Delta Rescue before. I have rescued 3 dogs, but not all dogs and cats and horses and other animals can be rescued. There's a ton that are in the wilderness that are abandoned, and Delta Rescue literally comes to the rescue. They are the largest Care for Life animal sanctuary in the entire world. If you go on their website, deltarescue.org, you can see what I'm talking about. What an amazing place. It's a no-kill Care for Life super sanctuary. They provide a place to be loved for these animals. They give them proper nutrition and veterinary care. I had a chance recently to talk to the founder, Leo Grillo. This is a mission for him, to make sure that this place is a sanctuary, that wherever these animals are abandoned or left in the wilderness, they can be brought together and live in a way that is enjoyable for them. Delta Rescue relies solely on our contributions. That's it. They need our help. Please go to deltarescue.org, check out that website, look at the videos, see the great work they're doing, and just know that no donation is too small. Every dollar helps and goes directly to the animals. Please go to deltarescue.org. If you want to call them, they can chat with you. They'll send you their newsletter, but please help support the great work they do at deltarescue.org. So how much do you think is Kevin McCarthy's fault about the questions that you raised about how the process works? What I'm trying to figure out is, can the next person, we'll get to that in a second, can the next person actually make real change, or is this institutionally broken?
Well, it's not going to be easy to make the change, but if we say, hey, we're going to follow the law, there's a law from 1974 that says we're required to have a budget, we're required to have 12 separate spending bills. I believe it could have been done with the right leadership. I'm talking to every person that's throwing their hat in the ring. I met with Jim Jordan yesterday. I literally I had to cut off the phone call short, but I just talked with Kevin Hearn. I will talk with Steve Scalise also. It's not going to be easy, but we have to give it the God's honest try. We have to attempt to do that. Whether we end up with another CR or not, we have to go through the 12 appropriations bills, put the power of spending back into the people's hands, not the most powerful. And next year, when January comes back around, we have to do all of this a lot sooner. Yeah. The budget resolution in April, the spending bills in July, so that we put Schumer in the Senate between a rock and a hard place, that we force their hand to do this and follow the law. And that's good for everybody. But we can't have a speaker that makes promises to conservatives, makes promises to moderates, and says something else to Democrats. And here we had a guy that told conservatives, we are definitely impeaching Joe Biden. And then in the same day, 2 hours later, went over to moderates and told them, we're never going to impeach Joe Biden. I just want us to follow the evidence. I just want us to follow the truth, tell the truth and keep our promises, and not be all things to everyone all the time and do things that are physically impossible to do and not truthful.
All right. Well, that gets us to getting to 218. So that you just mentioned the three top candidates for speaker so far: Steve Scalise, the majority leader right now, Kevin Hearn, who's the chairman of the Republican Study Committee from Oklahoma, and Jim Jordan, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. What are you asking of them? What do you want them? I mean, what is it going to take for you to give them your vote?
Well, and I'm not trying to make any side deals. And I just told Kevin Hearn, I told Jim Jordan this yesterday. I want a speaker who's going to tell the truth. I want someone who can be trusted, who will.
But they're going to say
words.
Yes to that, right? They're going to say, Congresswoman, yeah, I'm going to give you my word. And so, but do you want? I know that
I want us to do the spending bills. We have to do that. That's got to be a part of it. And then the third thing is we can't take retribution out on the 8 that decided to vote their principles, vote their values, vote their conscience, because you can't get to speaker if you're going to punish those who kept their word and who voted on principle, because that's just not, we're going to be in a very tenuous situation if that happens. We need to come together and unite. I'm actually very excited about the speaker's race, because this is going to give us an opportunity to unite behind someone. And I like all three of them. I feel very good about all three of them. I've never had a situation with any of the three of them where I felt let down based on our conversation, based on a promise they made, based on anything that they've said they would do. I don't have that same reservation as I had before. And I really feel like with any of them that we will be in good hands.
So of the 8, as I said at the outset, you were not the one. If I had to pick, if you named 7 of those members off, I probably could have guessed them. If someone told me there's an 8th, you would not have been high on that list. Has the result of this vote put you, like, are you communicating more with a Matt Gaetz or a Bob Good or a Tim Burchett? Like, in other words, has this forced you all together, or is it just you were by yourself, you cast your vote, and then you're still the independent person you were?
I am still very much independent, but I've also had conversations with members I'd never talked to before. I mean, it's no secret that Matt Gaetz and I have gone at it over the years. I mean, we didn't really ever talk. And it just so happens we had similar positions for similar reasons, although mine are slightly different because I tend to be a little more independent as well. But, yesterday he and I did an interview together because we're on the same page here. I do believe in what he's fighting for is the truth, and fighting for things that are reasonable and responsible. It's not unreasonable to ask Congress to follow the law. Like, we can't expect our fellow Americans to follow the law if Congress itself won't follow its own laws. And so I don't think that's an unreasonable thing at all. And he's not the bad guy here. And it's the establishment, it's, the power structure. And you saw people walking off the floor in tears because we decentralized the most powerful people who thought that they had it all and controlled it all. Well, they don't control it anymore. The people should control the process through their elected representatives.
So you've posted some videos asking for people to give donations. You've mentioned your site. You talk about the establishment going after you, trying to take away your power.
They are.
Who is that?
Those are fellow members of Congress. So I just got a call from a reporter 20 minutes ago saying they're trying to take away my gavel.
But who's they? That's what I want to understand. Is it because
members of Congress, members that are angry with me over my vote? They want to take a strong female voice out of the conference. They want to strip me of my committee assignments, and they want to take away my gavel. And I say, you know what? I say, bring it on. And people can support me by going to nancymace.org.
Are you going to give me a name? Give me one name.
I'm not going to give names just yet. I'm going to let the anger, we're going to let the dust settle.
Yeah.
And I think that, some of this might clear up next week, but honest to God, Sean, I'm the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. I like a good fight, and I'm not afraid. And
I'm going to pivot to that.
You know what?
I'm going to pivot. I want to hear about, because I do want to get to the personal side of this in a second. But
yeah.
So you mentioned your district, it's swing. McCarthy, Axios published a whole list of all the money that McCarthy and his super PAC had given. You were actually at the top of that list, $30,000 that his super PAC has given you. Tim Burchett was at 25, Andy Biggs. Are you worried? Obviously, a lot of people have come to help to maintain that district. As they have a lot of districts. I'm not singling you out by any means, but are you concerned about, McCarthy, for all of his, whether you like him or hate him, was a fundraising powerhouse. Are you concerned about the next person might not be able to have the same political oomph that McCarthy had?
Well, certainly with our slim majority, money is going to be an issue. And that's why, we shouldn't have this power vacuum. We should have a deep bench of people that have the fundraising apparatus that if someone goes down, we just bring in the next person. I do feel confident about the apparatus that Steve Scalise has and Jim Jordan have. They're both prolific fundraisers. I know less about Kevin Hern, but after talking with him, I know that he's got the work ethic and values and the ability and opportunity to have that same machine. And we have a lot of work to do. And I'll tell you, Sean, this has been one of the least productive sessions of Congress that we have had in years. And given that everything that is on the line with regards to next year, everything is on the line. We haven't done anything to help with inflation, to help with the immigration, stem the tide of the illegal immigrants coming across the border, women's issues. We can't even talk about women's issues in the conference because, that's a sacred cow. You're not allowed to. But I will tell you, abortion will be on the ballot next year. It is an issue we have to address and talk about. And so if we don't get to work right now, we are definitely going to have major problems next year. But those problems were created long before this vote for speaker. We already knew that we were looking at the end of a barrel with what has gone on this year.
So you brought up in one of your concerns about McCarthy, women's issues. What do you mean by women's issues? And then secondly, you talked about abortion. How do you think the conference should handle this?
Well, every time we have a vote to protect life, we should have a vote to protect women. We need to show women that we care and we're compassionate and we're not going to demonize them for a decision that we don't agree with. I'm a victim of rape. I was raped at the age of 16. I dropped out of high school. I was torn. I was traumatized for a solid year. And I will tell you, the trauma of rape lasts a lifetime. It is not something that women can get over because they carry a lot of shame. And I know firsthand that when we demonize women for making a decision we disagree with, we are losing them, and we're losing them at a significantly high rate. And they are 51% of the electorate. We cannot afford to lose women.
I agree.
And so we need,
but that's yeah. And God, I cannot imagine what you've gone through personally, and having then the fortitude come out and talk about it. God bless you for that. But I guess the question I have is how. And to your point, I agree with you. We've got to make sure politically, but also I look at this more on principle. I think we should be doing the right thing. We should be protecting life. I'm a big supporter of adoption. I think that should be on the table. But when you say we should do more, like for someone who's listening right now, what does do more mean in terms of give us an example of the policies that you
an example, you mentioned adoption. I have adoption bill for women. So women don't have to choose abortion. We can get them the legal services, financial assistance, prenatal care, post maternity care, all those things. I have a bill that would do that. We need to help with the foster care system. What do we do with the children who are born, who are unwanted? We know that we have a terrible foster care system. The cost of childcare has gone up exponentially. So how do we repeal regulations to reduce the cost of childcare? Birth control is another one. I can't even get a vote like birth control. I have a bill that would cut red tape at the FDA to get birth control approved faster for women. And we're talking about self-administered, safe, not controversial birth control. I have a bill on that. I have a rape kit bill that Jim Jordan's judiciary passed out, I guess a week or two ago, unanimously, that would help get the rape kits that are on shelves right now, over 100,000 nationally, that have not been processed yet, but giving our state and local law enforcement the resources, encouragement, and incentives to process those rape kits, like all the things we can do to show women that we care. Well, at the same time, we're showing that we can also protect life. And so there has to be a balance there of protecting women and protecting life. And I don't think that's a lot to ask, and it's not controversial, or it shouldn't be. Rape victims need a voice too, and I'm trying to be a strong voice for them in Congress.
I want one more question on what's happening, and then I want to pivot to South Carolina and you. By my count, when you guys come back on Wednesday for what would be the first official vote, if we could actually settle this on Wednesday, we're down to 36 days till the next government shutdown. What do you think? What do you want to see happen in those 36 days, and do you think that's enough time?
Well, we have to get the 8 appropriations bills out. We have to rush the process. And I wish that we didn't hit pause and adjourn this week. We could have been doing another impeachment inquiry this week, a hearing. We could have done appropriations bills and hearings this week. Like, the committee work can still continue when you don't have a permanent speaker. You can still work on all those things. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and do that work. We got to get those 8 spending bills out, get them onto Schumer's desk, and then have a plan B. And I think we can do that. We did 4 bills recently in a span of a week or so. Let's get the other 8 out over the next 2 weeks. And then work on, how do we force Schumer's hand on the spending bills? How do we get it done? How do we avoid a CR? But the CR, that might be the only option on the table at the end of this thing. Hopefully it's not. But next year, when January comes around, we need to have a plan that we will follow and implement so we don't make the same mistakes and repeat the lies and the BS next year. Let's just do what we say we're going to do. And that's it.
It's funny. Everyone acts like September 30th comes up out of surprise. Like, I think back to like my high school years when it's like, really, the test is tomorrow? Like, it happens every year and everyone gets surprised. I think you're right. Like, I think that, for what it's worth, and whoever the candidates for speaker should put a plan out on this. The idea that everyone's caught off guard by this is nuts. I was the committee spokesman for the budget committee on the House. Like, none of this it's all prescribed, to you point, in the Budget Act of 1974. It is something that everybody is aware of, and I think we can get ahead of it. I also think, frankly, that we're not doing a good job. We talk in very vague terms. We're like, let's have a 1% cut, which is meaningless to anybody out there. Yeah. There are programs and there are inefficiencies in government where we should be jamming the Democrats and saying this program was established in 1922 and it's outlived its usefulness. Force Democrats to vote on wasteful spending and outdated stuff. But 1% or 1.625% across.
It's hard to understand.
Right. No,
I don't. One of the things, like last year, we spent over $1 million on a study injecting mice with alcohol to get them to binge.
That's good. That's a waste of alcohol. Do you agree?
Well, at that price, I hope it was expensive tequila like Patron. Was it Patron? I don't know. We spent over $2 million last year in injecting beagle puppies, 6-month-old beagle puppies, with cocaine. We all know cocaine is a drug and it's bad. Why are we spending that kind of money killing these puppies? We just need to get Hunter.
You know what? I think just not to get off topic, but I think if you got Hunter Biden aware of this, that you might get somebody on board. All right. By now, you know that I start my morning the same way that Chuck Norris does. That's probably the only 2 things that we have in common. He's 83. The guy looks amazing. He's still kicking and punching, and I'm barely getting by. But at least it's the one thing I can do that follows Chuck Norris, because he had been doing all of this, looking into supplements and things for his whole life. And he finally figured out that if he put key ingredients that had worked for him into one formula called Morning Kick, it actually had the best result. It combines all of Chuck's 10 most favorite supplements into one daily drink. As I told you before, I start every morning doing it. I just take a scoop, put it in some water with a little ice. It tastes amazing. It's got probiotics, prebiotics, superfoods, powerful supplements. And depending on the taste, there's a strawberry lemonade flavor. There's others. I love them all. There's no going wrong. In fact, as I've said before, if I could drink more of it, I would. If you go to mymorningkick.com/Spicer, You can try it for yourself, see what you think. I think you'll like it as much as I do. mymorningkick.com/Spicer. And it's a great way to kick off your day, give yourself a little bit more energy, more digestion, and a little more mental clarity. Once again, mymorningkick.com. Let me get back to, I want to just touch on something in South Carolina, and then I want to talk about you. You've got two candidates running for president from South Carolina, Nikki Haley and Tim Scott. Here's my take on this. South Carolina's primary, I don't think both of them will be in when it comes up. And I think if one of the two, whoever remains, is still in, then I think if they don't win it, then it's over. Because the way I look at this is, politically speaking, if you go into your home state, now obviously Governor Haley is out of office, but Tim Scott is still there, and don't do well, it's a political embarrassment. So where do you think this goes for the two of them?
Yeah, I actually think they both end up on the ballot in South Carolina. And that's obviously going to split the vote. They're both constituents of mine. I'm friends with both of them. I love and respect both of them. And I think it's great to see South Carolina on the stage with both of those individuals. But I'll tell you, and you know this historically, Sean, speaking, if you minus 2012 with Newt Gingrich's win in South Carolina, he lost the nomination that year. But minus that one election year, historically, over the last several years and decades, if you win South Carolina, you will go on to win the nomination. That is historic. That's the precedent. That's the way that it's always been. So I believe that South Carolina will be the most important state. And it's like a winner take all. You win South Carolina, you're going to go on and win the rest of it. And so I think it's do or die when they get to our state. Yeah. It's tough. The odds are stacked against them right now. But
if they don't win, do you agree with me? I mean, my view is, if you can't win or maybe come a close second, you're done, right? And I say this, I mean, my view in Iowa is that if DeSantis and or Pence don't do well, they're out. Christie's all in New Hampshire. He's out if he doesn't do there. I just think you can't claim that the people who know you the best, i.e. your governor of South Carolina, that if you don't do well, So
yeah,
that
100%.
Okay, yeah, but that's why I think it's actually interesting. My view is that one of the two of them says, "Hey, I'm not doing well enough. I don't want to get embarrassed. I'm getting out before I get." The numbers will be what they will be going into South Carolina. But I just have a hard time believing both of them stay in heading into that.
And Trump's numbers keep going up. I mean, they keep going up. And, you sort of look at it, why would someone go with the cover band when they get Metallica for free, right? I mean, so.
Would you be comfortable if he's the nominee again? Are you comfortable with that?
Well, it's up to the voters. It's not up to me.
No. But I'm just saying. But that's what I'm asking. The voters pick Donald Trump, right? If he is the nominee, are you okay? Or will you vote for the nominee?
I will be supporting the nominee. I think we'll be in the fight of our life, and we have to unite. And right now, he's up 10 points nationally over Joe Biden. Right. I mean, so there's a path for winning the White House. I think we could win the White House, lose the House of Representatives, and flip the Senate. I think that's a realistic scenario next year.
I listen, I'm with you on this. The redistricting that's going to happen in Alabama and a couple other states, New York.
And even my district maybe too. I mean, there's a Supreme Court case with my district lines next week.
I mean, but this is where I don't think people are, this is to me where the game really is. It's inside baseball. It's these redistricting that's wiping out a majority, and you're going in not with a 4 or 5 seat majority, but frankly, maybe even 1 seat down because of the redistricting.
Yep. No, exactly. It's happening in New York also. And then it might happen in our state, which is why I'm a very much an independent voice, and I've always operated that way. So no matter what the district looks like, voters will understand she's a man of her word, and she's gonna fight for us and march to the beat of her own drum like we want her to.
You are everywhere. You were on The View earlier this week. You were on CNN this week. What is your philosophy on doing that? I mean, do you just sort of say, I'm going to take it to them? Because it's funny, when I worked on the Hill, we sort of put people in buckets. You had people who are workhorses, people who are constituent service people who really were great messengers. What is it that you want to be? And why do you do the media that you do?
I want to be all of the above. In fact, we have KPIs and metrics in our office. Like, we have certain standards, like you got to call people back within 24 hours. They've got to get an email back within 24 hours. Like, I try to run my office like I run a business, right? And I'm a businesswoman, and we have a lot of KPIs, but also I think it's really important to communicate. The only venues that I have to communicate with audiences in South Carolina are the media, mainstream media, social media, online, the internet, web, et cetera. And I'm not afraid to take tough questions. I want people to know where I stand and why I stand. It's why I go on all the networks, because I want people to know and hear that message and know exactly where I am at all times. And if I've moved on an issue, you'll see me make that move. And I just want people to know and hear from me and the office and what we're doing and where we stand and why we voted the way that we voted on any number of votes. I think it's really important to be a good communicator with the people that you represent. And that's only one of many avenues that we use to communicate with our constituents.
Is there any show or host that you won't go on? Because I look, my view on this, and I've said it publicly, I get, I am a big believer in taking our message places, be conservative principles, take it and allow people to see the message. But there's also people and shows that I don't think are willing to have a discussion that is fruitful or civil. And there are shows where I just go, I don't see the point in doing that. What is your standard for what you accept as an invitation?
I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk to me. I haven't quite said, hey, I'll never go on that show. I know that it took a while for us to do get onto The View and do that. There were some people that said, no, you cannot go on The View. I brought a spoon and a knife. So I was like, we can sit here and eat ice cream together as girls, or, I can shank you. Like whatever. I wasn't really sure how to do that, right? Because you just never know. And I was like, we're going to do this because I don't believe in talking to an echo chamber. I believe that somebody like you, someone's got to hear that message.
Yeah.
And I want to be a voice of reason for the party. And I want to be a voice for women. I want women to know that there are smart, articulate, thoughtful, pro-women conservatives in our party. And, so to me, it's sort of baffling that I'm a unicorn when I just feel like I'm just a normal suburban mom, fiscally conservative, socially sensible. Why am I the one for these normal, reasonable positions making headlines? It doesn't really make sense to me, because I feel like I'm just being a normal, good fiscal conservative.
So let's get back to you for a second. You mentioned the horrible tragedy. I don't even know if that's an appropriate, and what you suffered at an early age. And then you went on to fight to become the first woman at the Citadel. I got to be honest with you. To me, and I'm not even going to try to find an analogy because I don't think anything would be appropriate. But you go through this on a personal level, and then you say, I'm going to be the first woman to hang out with all these guys at the Citadel that's got quite the reputation for tough, whatever. What was the motivation for doing that? I mean, because you're breaking the mold, but you had come from a background of having suffered something that, to your point, you live with for the rest of your life. And I'm not sure I'd want to put myself in that situation.
Yeah, you live with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of judgment. It's very hard to overcome. It took me 25 years to talk about what I had gone through publicly. I could not do it without tearing up or feeling all those emotions all over again. I'm a little bit older and wiser and a mom, and I felt it was really important for women to have those voices heard once I got elected. But the Citadel, for me, my dad was a graduate of the Citadel. He's the most decorated graduate they've ever had in their history. And I knew for me, it was kind of like an FU to the world, where I had gone through this horrific thing. I didn't really know it at the time, and I'm older and I look back on it. But for me, it was my chip on my shoulder to prove to myself, and it wasn't to go to be the first woman to do anything. It was, I'm going to go to this really tough place. I'm going to go to this place where I'm going to be challenged like I've never been challenged before. I'm going to face adversity and an obstacle unlike anything I'd ever faced in my life, and I wouldn't quit. And I also got to show myself that I could be successful no matter if the odds were against me. And I learned to be a fighter then. I learned to have courage. I learned to have confidence. I learned to stick up for myself. I learned to deal with the consequences of doing my duty, what I felt was my duty, and doing the right thing, no matter the consequences. And that experience trained me for the challenges, the obstacles, and certainly the adversity that I am facing today. It was not easy to take that vote 2 nights ago. It took a lot of courage and a lot of confidence to follow through with my conscience and my principles and my values. And I am dealing with the consequences of that vote. I will tell you, it's not been a very easy 24 hours, but the Citadel really trained me and prepared me for making these tough decisions and doing the right thing, no matter who is watching.
So you mentioned your dad. He's this tough guy that's the most decorated. What does he think at that time about saying, hey, my daughter's about to upend years of tradition and history.
Well, Daddy didn't know why I wasn't speaking at the well. I got a text in the middle of voting, and my father was asked Mom, and he doesn't text, but she asked me, Daddy wants to know why you're not speaking. and so I was like, I am watching. I think the debate that was going on just fine without me. And so it's interesting to hear from them, and he gets excited. He sometimes, other people, he's like,
what I'm asking though, what I was trying to ask is, you tell him at some point, 16, 17 or whatever, or, I want to go to the Citadel. And he says, I mean, this is a guy who is revered there. And he's like, oh my gosh, my daughter is now going to tip over the apple cart. And is he, what is the response to 16 or 17-year-old Nancy when you tell Dad, hey, I want to follow in your footsteps and be the first woman to upend this?
Oh, he definitely did not want me to do it. He thought that I wouldn't. He thought given the fragile state that I was in, he didn't think I could make it. He thought I would quit 24 hours in, and really encouraged me to rethink my decision. And I told my father all the reasons why I should go to the Citadel, why it would be a good environment for me to succeed. And I proved him wrong. And I loved that. It was great.
But was he worried? And I'm not was he worried about oh my gosh, I'm this reputationally, I don't want to be the guy who upends all this tradition? Or was he more worried about you and how you would be treated?
I think he was more worried about me and how I would be treated. Initially, his rejection of the idea was because of tradition. And then he finally came around when I did start my first day saying, well, tradition has changed. We're going to go along with the times. But when he dropped me off at school on the very first day at the Citadel, he didn't give me a hug. He didn't tell me he loved me. He shook my hand and he said, Nancy, don't call home if you want to quit. Just put on your shoes and start walking. And so I knew at that point I was on my own. He wasn't going to help. He was like, if you're going to do this, you have to do it on your own. You're not going to get any assistance from us.
And so you walk, I mean, like I said, I can't imagine. I think anytime you walk into any environment where you're the outlier. So what's it like for you for that first little while? I mean, how did the men, young guys are not nice people sometimes.
Oh, it was a really difficult experience. I think I finally cried on day 5. I just broke down. It was a very emotional experience. But ironically, Sean, it wasn't necessarily the cadets. I mean, of course, there were some cadets who were mean and difficult to deal with. But I learned it was the women. So we would be off campus, or it would be wives or girlfriends or moms. The worst harassment I got was from women. It wasn't from the men. And I first learned that this women on women violence that we have in this country, it's actually a real thing. And we tear each other down. We don't want each other to be successful. And I saw that firsthand. It was wild to see that reaction from other women.
Interesting. So interestingly, you go through all of this. What was it? Most people go to the Citadel or to a military academy or to a maritime academy because they want to join the military. What was your thought afterwards about what you wanted to do and why not get into the military at that point?
I had only been there for 3 years. I graduated from school in 3 years. I didn't have the ROTC credits. And ironically, it was my father who said, it's a different Army. Back then, this was in 99-ish. If only it were today, it's a far different military today than it was even then. And I had taught myself to code. I love technology. I love business. And about a third of the students from the Citadel, when they graduate, only a third go into active duty service, another third go to graduate school, and then another third go into the private sector, which is what I did. I was a computer programmer for a couple of years before starting my own company. So I've always had this kind of independent spirit, sort of vibe, and enjoyed working for myself in those years and building a company.
And so as you're a mom now, and what is it? I mean, is there anything, do you is this something that comes up a lot with your kids that they say, well, hey, Mom, she broke this glass ceiling. She was a trailblazer. What is it that you want to instill in your kids going forward?
My kids are teenagers. They're 14 and 16, Sean, and they don't care. I mean, they don't care about the history there. but I do think they're still kind of young. My oldest, I think, is finally understanding why mommy does what she does. I had the kids up. They come up to DC every year, and they were here up in DC recently, and the kids both said it. They were on the floor, and they were like, "Man, we want to do this one day." And I think they finally understand the impact that I've had on history, why I work so hard to help Americans who need it. And they're finally coming around. It's still going to take a few years, probably in their 20s. We can have a wise conversation about it, but they're also learning. I use this as an opportunity to teach my kids about values, and their values they're even more conservative than I am. But like, for example, after the UAP hearing that we had on oversight, that really got them excited. And they saw me trending on TikTok for the first time, because they don't really care what I do, but the UAP thing, they're really excited about. And when they had the first debate on Fox News, all they wanted to see was a question from one of the hosts about UAPs. And it got asked that night, right? Yeah. And so it's been really fun to have these ideological debates with them, talk about why we have oversight hearings and all the things. But they get their news and information from TikTok, which is also, if we want to talk to the kids and the future generation, we have to talk to them in all mediums.
Yeah, I will. That's one area where I'll tell you right now, that's my big sticking point. I'm sorry. I believe that, we talk about taking principle stands. TikTok to me is a tool of the Chinese government. But I have one more thing I want to get to before this, which is what's next for you? Like, you were in the South Carolina legislature here. You talk about the Gaetz. Is the House where you want to be? Do you see yourself? I know you ran for the Senate before, governor. What do you want to do next?
I don't have any plans, Sean. I've never had a plan. There's never been a strategy. I don't do things because, hey, this is going to benefit me now or in the future. I love the House. It's the Wild West. I love serving South Carolina. I love delivering for the constituents I serve. And honest to God, I don't know what the future holds. And I'll be here for as long as the voters allow me to do it.
All right. We end with a quick rapid fire. We want to get to know you a little better. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. When you travel, do you arrive early or just in time?
Early.
How low can you let your cell phone battery go?
10%.
Oh, see that. If you go below 50, I get worried. How many?
I have a charger. I have a charging case. It has all the different chargers. It's with me 24/7.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, I can't. I get nervous. Anyway, if you, how many unread emails do you currently have right now?
10,000.
Okay, that's low. I'm at 70-something thousand.
I have 500 voicemails and 400 something texts, not unanswered.
Well, I feel lucky now. I feel like, wow, if I'm getting a return text, that tells you that you're on the high end of the list. If you had 48 hours to binge a show, what would it be?
Oh, I want to watch 1923 next. Okay. I did Yellowstone in 1883. I think 1923 is the next series.
All right. I'm still behind on Yellowstone. How clean do you keep your house?
Very.
What is your least favorite chore?
Oh, gosh. I would say sweeping.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's a lot of work.
See, I think I'll sweep all day long. I don't want to do laundry. Sweeping, I'll take it. I'll trade you sweeping.
I don't want to do my kids' laundry. I stopped doing it.
That's
like,
smart.
If you want clean clothes, go wash them yourself.
Who is the coolest celebrity you've ever met?
Dave Chappelle.
If you could have a drink with anyone that you've never met before, living or dead, who would it be?
Ooh, Calvin Coolidge, probably. I think he was like the accidental president and seemed like such a normal guy.
Interesting. Okay. Biggest pet peeve?
Repeated questions from children who already got the answer the first time. My children.
I knew where that was going.
When you get the same question 5 times in a row, I'm like, okay, we're done here.
You just are trying to wear me down. What's something Nancy Mace won't go cheap on?
Nancy Mace is very cheap. I don't like to spend money.
I know, but neither do I. I'm frugal. But there's certain things that I've learned are worth the money. What's something you go, okay, if we're doing it, we're going to do it right.
I like to buy organic food.
Okay. Especially where things are these days. Last question for you. I did a reality TV stint. I was on Dancing with the Stars. If you were forced to be on a reality television show, which one would you choose?
It'd have to be a travel one. I think I could win any travel race. I like to travel and I'm good at it.
would you want to do like Amazing Race where you're doing it, or will you actually have to go? I mean, I'm not even a big fan of Amazing Race, but I think that they're actually on the go. So you want to be on the go, or do you want
a race? Like I think I can go. I mean, some kind of a race, like Amazing Race. Like
okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Nancy Mace, thank you for all your time. I know how busy you are this week. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you, Sean. And it's nancymace.org for your listeners and viewers.
All right. Thank you. All right. I thought that was an interesting conversation. As I mentioned, I mean, look, 8 of these folks voted no or voted yay to vacate the chair, voted against McCarthy. And as the race continues, how they vote is going to matter. Who they're with, who they line up with, how we get to 218. House is back next week. On Tuesday, we have this forum or whatever, but this will be interesting. How we get to 218, what concessions they have to make, if any, where we go, and what is there a renewed sense of commitment to getting things done, to securing the border, to cutting spending, to doing all these things? Are there any side deals that have to get made? But we got our work cut out for it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the week, we started this week with 45 days of new runway to get the government funded. We've cut that already, and then we're going to go through the weekend. We'll come back. Then we got to get a new speaker. I mean, they got to get acclimated themselves, but we've lost 8 days to get the work done, to send bills to the Senate. Because remember, it's the House is just sending stuff to the Senate. Even if it gets these other bills done, the Senate then has to conference them, which they have shown no appetite to do. So there is a lot of work to be done. And as we head into the weekend, let's see how much happens over the weekend, how many phone calls get made, what concessions happen. But anyway, I enjoyed this conversation to further understand where things stand. Thank you for everyone who's subscribing. I've mentioned this before. Please go to Apple Podcasts. It's the weekend. I mean, you got a few extra minutes, right? Go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review. It really helps the growth of the show. I do appreciate and am humbled by everybody who has subscribed on YouTube and Rumble. Thanks for everyone who watches on the first every night at 6 o'clock. But that Apple Podcast and those YouTube numbers help us a ton. So thank you. I know a lot of you watch on Rumble, and I appreciate that as well. But those YouTube and Apple Podcast numbers help. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here with so much to break down as we go into this critical week. So enjoy your time. We'll see you back here on Monday on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.